Hi guys, Jack Spearcoat here, and I wanted to do a bit of a follow-up video with you guys on the article that I just had published on Permaculture News, because there's already a lot of gnashing of teeth, and you don't have a right to tell people what not to do, and you're wrong because I did it and it worked. And I want to make sure that this article is understood. And most of the objections to this article that I see so far indicate to me that the person scanned the article quickly and did so with a perception bias because they don't want to be told this very important thing, I believe, that we need to take in as permaculturists that are doing earthworks. So I want to start out with what prompted me to write this article and what I'm talking about. I think if you read the entire article and all the stuff in it, it makes sense. But I also think that I'm going to probably, spend way too much time responding to objections, criticisms, and questions if I don't just do this video and say, hey, you want any follow-up on it? Here it is. So let's start out with what prompted this. So I have watched over and over and over through the years people show a piece of property covered with low-value trees, big trees, and saying, I don't know what to do here. I want to take these trees out, and then I want to kind of take this into a more productive system. And I see Hugulswales, 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 Hugulswales in the comments. Okay. I'm talking about full-scale swales. So you're talking 6 foot or wider. You're talking a center depth of at least 12 inches. You're talking about an average depth probably across the width of a swale going 6 to 9 feet of 10 inches. You're talking about something that per 150 feet is holding 10,000 gallons of water or more. I'm not talking about a little swale that you dig with your shovel. I'm not talking about a footpath in your garden. I'm not talking about any of that stuff at all. I'm talking about taking a big old excavator in, 16-ton or bigger, and start grabbing trees and laying them on contour, setting that thing up and burying that with dirt. If you do that, I am not saying even at that point that I'm guaranteeing you that that system is going to fail and go washing down the side of a bank. I'm saying you have created an extreme potential for that reality to occur, and you've done so with extra labor, and you've done so with zero gain to what the system is capable of doing, because the two systems are not designed to work together. When we're building full-scale swales and putting that downgrade mound, we're putting trees in that mound. That's what that system is designed to do. I didn't say so. That's what the system is designed to do. Take a look in your PDM and you'll learn more about that if you disagree with me. If you put wood cores in those, they're going to collapse in time as the wood breaks down. And that means that if we're planting trees into a mound, put a tree in there, and that mound collapses, we've exposed the root crown of the tree. We've made the tree unstable. There's just a lot of reasons we don't do these two systems together. But again, what prompted me to write the article is not your footpath garden. It's not your Hugel mound that's this big, okay? It's not your standalone Hugel mound sitting on the side of a bank somewhere on contour, even though Sepulcher says not to, and we'll get to that in a second. It is a full-scale swale on top of a full wood core. So, here's a few objections I have heard so far. I did it and it worked. Okay. I don't want to be harsh, but it worked is a very subjective term. What that means is so far I can't see anything that's happened poorly, and I assume that it's working better than it would have had I not done it. And again, I'm seeing people post pictures, and I'm looking mostly at hand-dug shovel swales about this wide. Okay, so back from the camera, 3 foot, about that deep, about 4 inches, and a mound like this, maybe, on the other side. If you read my article, that's not what I'm talking about. That is a raised bed with a footpath. It's a swale-like feature in a landscape. That's at a micro level. If you do the math on that, there's not enough water that's infiltrated or captured by that swale to create the type of problem we're talking about. I also have had a couple people tell me, you should not tell people what to do and what not to do. You are free to do anything you want with the information you have. I'm warning you about the potential consequences of being loose. I've also said you got to do the math. I've had at least 2 people now tell me, I don't care to do the math. Okay, then you better stick to stuff you can do with a shovel by yourself, and it better be relatively small. If you start bringing excavators in, and you start moving cubic yards of soil per swipe, and you don't do the math, no matter how long you get away with it, if you keep doing it, sooner or later you're going to run into a serious consequence. I've also had people say, well, I built a Hugel on contour, and your contention is Sepp Holzer says not to do that at all infinity. Sepp Holzer does say not to do that at all infinity, and if you read the article, I actually say, here's some ways that that's been done that doesn't cause a problem. So when you say you built a Hugel on contour, what you mean is I took some wood, I put it on contour, and I buried it with dirt. The contention of my article is don't do that and put in a full-scale swell behind it. Okay, so what you've done is what you've done. You've put an organic matter deposition trap, Hugel-like feature on contour. Is it ever going to fail? I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into that. How long is it? How long is it? What's the catchment above it? What is its capacity to hold back water as a mound? Does it pretty much just shed water around itself? It's probably not going to cause a problem. Is it a Hugel bed? When Sepp Holzer says don't put a Hugel bed on contour, he's talking about one thing and one thing only, because he's a German-Austrian, and when they say something, they mean precisely what they've said. What he's saying, a Hugel bed, 70-degree angles, 1.5 to 2 meters tall, 30% wood core. If it isn't that, it's a pile of dirt with some wood in it. Maybe it's below grade, maybe it's above grade, but it's not a Hugel bed. So when Sepp says not to do it, and I'm referencing that, that's what he's talking about. But I'm referencing it because of the hydrology involved. You also have to realize Sepp Holzer is sitting like this on his Kramerhof. He's carving out basically a contour-based swell-like feature we call a terrace, and then he's putting Hugel beds on those. And if you take that huge amount of catchment onto that flat terrace, and you put Hugels on contour there, you bring the side of the mountain down. And that's why he's saying not to do that. So it's not that you can never put a Hugel on contour, but you need to be thinking about everything that goes with that. What's the catchment area? And what most of us in the United States call Hugelkultur is not Hugelkultur. Okay? Another way that I've heard this explained, well, here's how I did my Hugulswales. I went and I dug a great big trench on contour. I filled that with wood. Then I put the dirt back on it. Then I dug the swell behind it and put it up over top of it. Okay, that's almost certainly never going to result in a giant mass going downhill to your neighbors. The natural disaster potential there has been mitigated because we've locked the organic matter core like a keyway in a dam almost into the ground. So, is it dangerous? No. Does it have the potential to be dangerous? 99.99999 chance, no. Is it bad? Probably not, but maybe, and you'll understand when I explain what happens next. The reason Hugel beds are built above grade, or maybe just slightly below grade if we need to take a little bit of dirt away to create some covering beyond what we can take from around the sides of it, is because if we take an organic matter core and we put it above grade, and then we cover it with dirt, we end up in a situation where we have a highly aerobic breakdown. We have a big, slow compost pile. If we dig out a trench and we put wood down into it, and then we cover that over, it can work. I've done it, and I've had very good results from gardens built that way. But if we then take a large scale, again, 6 to 9 feet wide, 10,000 gallons or more holding capacity per 150 linear feet, upgraded that, and supersaturate that soil, we have made a great big mass of what? Anaerobic wood. Now, what does anaerobic wood do? It stays together for a very long time. It doesn't break down quickly at all. It stays there forever and a day. It's why we find stuff buried in peat bogs, thousands of years old, basically preserved. That's not what Hugelkultur is supposed to be about. We've also created an anaerobic zone. Now, how bad is it? It depends. How big is it? What type of anaerobes are there? How resilient is the rest of the landscape? How brittle is the rest of the landscape? What have you? But we created an anaerobic pocket, which is never something we really want to do. And we've given no gain to the system. What we've also done is expended machine hours and man hours and energy for no real gain. Now, I guess if you just need to get rid of the material and you have a machine that you own or you've leased it for so long, it's not really an issue, you're doing it on your own, okay, fine. But you haven't really gotten anything out of that. I've also seen, well, I did exactly what you said not to do. I put in a big long pile of wood. There's a picture. Here's my picture of my wood. I dug this big swale. I put that dirt on there, and that thing's been there 3 years, and nothing bad has happened. Okay, that doesn't mean that you haven't created the potential for something bad to happen, and you probably haven't gained anything through all that expenditure of time, materials, money, and labor. because that is a mound that's going to collapse over time. It's an inappropriate use of technology if you want your system to be efficient. Now, if you don't, you can do whatever you want. You really can. I won't get upset about it. But what I'm telling you is if we let this term go unabated and people just keep hurling it around, sooner or later somebody's going to get a hold of a large excavator, 12,000, 16, 12 ton, 16 ton, 25 ton excavator, and they're going to do this at scale. And you're going to see a mudslide like you've never seen before in your life, and it's not going to look good for permaculture. Again, I really think you have to take in the totality of what I'm saying here. And your little berms are not Hugels, okay? They're not. And your little footpaths are swale-like features. They're not full-scale swales. And you're taking what I've said out of context. That's what I've got for you in this. Now, I know there's still going to be people that are upset, people that are angry, and I'll tell you what, I'll make you a commitment. If anybody brings up anything that I haven't covered in this video and the article, I will address it. If we just keep rehashing the same things, I've said what I've said. I have no animosity toward anybody that doesn't agree with me. But if you create this feature in your landscape, whether it fails or not, you're creating the potential for catastrophic failure. And there are potential catastrophic failures all around us all the time. And many times those things stay and don't fail. But we know better. We know, for instance, our bridges throughout the United States of America are, in some cases, barely held together. And the fact that they haven't failed yet doesn't mean that their potential failure is not there. And every once in a while, we get reminded of that. The difference is those bridges were actually done with good engineering by people that really knew what they were doing, and they've been able to hold out long past their potential lifespan. And as I said in my article, the one group of people you will not hear object to anything that I said in that article are people with hydrological engineering or civil engineering backgrounds. Go ask some, and they'll tell you. If you take a big, giant, buoyant organic matter core and bury it with a loosely compacted mound and infiltrate tens of thousands of gallons behind it, you have created an unstable soil condition. And just because it doesn't happen to fail doesn't mean that the potential is not there. That's all I'm trying to say. I hope that saves at least one person from a major disaster.